we both sort of take a pride in trying to get under the skin, and call bullshit when we see it. So, and the more they seem to be bullshitting us, the more we're going to look for it.
Yeah.
So, hello and welcome to another Telecoms.com podcast. Just as a reminder, if you're watching us on the website or on Facebook, you can also listen to us on SoundCloud or iTunes, and vice versa. If you're listening to us, you can see us on the website or Facebook. Right, Ian's back from his deathbed this week. Good to see you back with rosy cheeks, Ian.
Yeah.
And as ever, we have Jamie with us as well. So we'll crack straight on, because Ian, you got some stuff you got more important things to do than this, haven't you? So we better get a move on.
I don't know if it's that important, but it probably
you've
isn't.
already told me about it, and I almost fell asleep. So
yeah, well, there we are.
Yeah.
Importance is a relative.
But we won't say what it is now, otherwise it'd be embarrassing for the person that I'm speaking to. So.
Yes. Anyway, so we're going to start off by talking. So it's basically all about the Q4 earnings numbers that have come out thick and fast this week. We're going to start off by talking about operators. Then we're going to move on to the big kit vendors. And finally, we're going to move on to the US tech giants. So to start off, operators. Ian, you wrote about our very own BT. How are they doing? They're
not doing great, I don't think.
Okay.
I mean, their share price went down quite a bit after the update. Sort of dropped, was trading down about 5%, I think, mid-morning.
It's not what you want.
Which isn't what you want. They've obviously had lots of problems last year, and they've been hit hard by this scandal in Italy, this accounting scandal at the global services business, and then they had to sort of lower their forecasts. They're now saying that, you know, they've not changed the guidance and are saying that they're going to achieve that, but investors don't sound all that convinced.
Right.
And a lot of the attention in the mainstream press is obviously focused on what's happening at global services, which had quite a big revenue drop, I think, and a sort of fall off in order intake.
And that's been going for a few quarters, hasn't it?
That's always been a problem for it, even since the days when Ian Livingstone was CEO, and they were, and before then, when it was sort of tried to develop it as the growth engine of BT, and it always seemed to have issues. There were write-downs back in those days. I remember.
So even hiring someone out of Baywatch hasn't helped.
Exactly. Yeah. That for me was the interesting thing, actually, because Patterson came in and his thing has been sort of more focused, I guess, on the consumer side. Spending lots on sports rights, and that consumer business has been quite a good engine of growth for BT over the last. I think he took over in September 2013 as CEO. And ever since then, it's reported increases in revenues, and sometimes quite healthy ones, sort of getting up to double-digit levels.
But his big bet was on content, wasn't it? That's how he defined himself. Yeah. That's defined his reign since he started, and it's. I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers specifically, but it flopped again.
Well, the consumer business had the first drop in sale, and it was a very small drop. I mean, it didn't even show up in percentage terms. It's like 1 million less than a year earlier, but it's the first year-on-year fall they've had since he took over. And there were some other kind of bad signs, like number of retail broadband additions. They still grew, but it was very much down on this time last year. They lost TV customers.
I've got that TV. I never watch it.
Just signs that it's kind of running out of steam a bit, and also the operating costs were not particularly good because there's a knock-on effect when you're investing so heavily. Obviously,
they're offering a lot of things for free.
They're offering a lot of things for free, and they're spending a lot of money.
I got the BT Sports ad for free.
Free in inverted commas.
No. Well, yeah.
But Kevin Bacon can't be cheap either.
That's
So my BT.
But I get all of the MMA fights basically for free, which
get Joe Rogan
incredible.
for free.
No, but it's amazing.
And then they've this week as well. There's there's kind of pressure's been coming on them from all directions, it seems. So they've had Jamie's been writing a lot about small fibre operator called City Fibre, which has got quite aggressive fibre to the premises plans.
In partnership with Vodafone,
hammered by regulators, and they've come out this week and said they're going to be more aggressive on fibre. And roll out to 3 million premises. I think originally they had 2 million by 2020, but it's all very conditional. It's all we don't want to provide battery backup. We want to basically be able to force customers to switch.
What is battery?
Well,
backup?
I think it basically means if you have a power cut, your fixed line goes down, and it saves them a lot of money on
Oh, so they install a capacitor to keep you going, or not to save money.
Yeah. So if they don't install it, then it lessens their rollout costs.
I see.
But it means you've got, if you get a power cut, then you can't use your service.
Game over.
And they want to force customers over. They want to increase charges for wholesale. So all these things that are have always been controversial.
When I wrote it up, I was like the other big string attached, which BT's been doing forever, is it's always sort of trying to ponce money off the state and the rest of the industry. It's all going, we're really into. So they've branded it like full fibre or fibre-tastic or something like that.
That's right, yeah.
Fibre first. That was it.
First,
I knew it was something alliterative.
Fibre last more like in Europe.
Fibre first, implying that they're having like a massive bowl of all brown for breakfast or something. And they're going fibre first, and then there's a sort of but.
Yeah.
And then there were two asterisks.
So it's not really a commitment at all.
Yeah, there were two asterisks really, two buts. One was if you want more than just a bare minimum, everyone's got to have a whip round and chuck us some money.
Yeah.
And the other one was, by the way, we're still well into G-Fast. Now, what's the point in saying fibre first and we're still really into G-Fast? It's either or, isn't it?
This is the thing. I wrote that as well, I think, that it raises huge questions about G-Fast. They've talked about extending this even further, that by the mid-2020s they want to get to 10 million fibre premises potentially, which is the same number they're talking about covering with G-Fast. So if they're going to do this fibre plan, then G-Fast is going to be very short-lived, or there's lots of things that haven't really been dealt with, I think.
I mean, this is one thing I love about the City Fibre sort of Vodafone partnership, is that as far as I can see, and the questions that I've asked, there doesn't seem to be any conditions to it. They said, in Milton Keynes, they're making that a gigacity, whatever you want to call it, and they will lay fibre. And to trench that street, there doesn't have to be 40% demand from all the houses. They're just going to put trench the fibre through that street, and you can sign up to it. So the only thing you need to do is just from that trench is just run a wire, to the premises. So I mean, that's the great thing I like about this partnership, is that it's unconditional. They're just they're just going, bugger it, we're going to roll out fibre.
Yeah,
and that's the way to pressure them, isn't it? Sorry,
I've got a bit of sympathy for BT because they're obviously heavily regulated in a way that City Fibre isn't, and
so they're entitled to moan a little bit about the public sector. They're like, if you're going to regulate us, then help us out as well.
So Jamie and I went to an Orange Day the other week, and we talked to some of the CEOs of their European businesses. And I was chatting with the CEO of Spain for a bit, and he actually said one of the reasons it's been easier for us in Spain in terms of fibre rollout, and they've been really aggressive, and they're not that far behind Telefonica, I don't think now.
Right,
is because we're not regulated in the same way.
Well, didn't they say they've got more on their, with all the relationships they've got more running on their networks than Telefonica does,
which includes partnerships.
I can't remember what the numbers are, but
on the mobile side, I don't know if fixed and mobile I'm talking about here, but on the mobile they've got so many MVNO relationships.
Right,
they've actually got more data travelling across their mobile network than Telefonica has.
Yeah.
So, sorry, were you going to say something?
I was just saying it's interesting that they're an incumbent in France, obviously, and have had regulatory pressure there. But when they've been in another country as the number 2 player or number 3 player, it's a very different environment for them. They don't have that. You're the former state-owned monopoly, and you're sort of bound in red tape to do all of this. And this is what BT's wrestling with. So,
but then at the same time, it's a tough one. You go, okay, you're quite heavily regulated. You got the legacy of being the former state monopoly, and everyone's got their eye on you. But, what was it? It was privatised in the 80s, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
So, 30 years ago.
Yeah, but they've got all this copper to maintain. They've got this huge
but in those 30 years,
issue.
It's made a few quid, hasn't it? It's made a few quid out of being the former state monopoly.
The pension thing, though, I don't think... I hate it when people use that as an excuse, because it's their own fault. They're facing a pension deficit because... Right. They poorly manage their finances, not because of any external reason. So it drives me to the wall. Well, and
also they're a good company. Loads of companies have got dodgy pensions. I don't know what's going on with the whole pension industry, but no one seems to be able to cover their asses when it comes to pensions.
Yes,
that's just weird. I don't know why that isn't as big a scandal as the banking scandal a decade ago and all that sort of thing. I guess as long as everyone still gets their pensions paid, it just becomes this Ponzi scheme, doesn't it? Where they're constantly paying off current pensions by getting money off the younger people paying in, and then worrying about how to pay them in 20, 30, 40 years later. It's properly dodgy, but then the financial sector's got some good form on dodginess. One thing I want to say, back to the sort of BT, and you said this is a bit of an inflection point in terms of the momentum of its consumer business. one thing that occurs to me about their spend on sort of TV content and that sort of stuff, and the stuff Pierre was saying that they're giving away, it does strike me as it's a bit of a bottomless pit. It's a bit of an arms race, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, you go and buy a bunch of footy, but then someone else has got some footy, and then what about the American football, and what about the MMA?
What about Amazon coming in and bidding?
Yeah, and you got Amazon, and you got Facebook, and you got all these other people, and it does come to position. I don't know if we've said this on the podcast, but Jamie's certainly spoken about this offline about someone like Orange again. We've got to be careful. People are going to think you're getting paid by Orange, Jamie. How they've got a much more sort of strategic, just select little bits of content.
A bit more
in-house.
Not so much that. It's more the genres they're going after.
Right, but they're not spending like crazy.
They're opposed
That's what I meant by strategic.
They're opposed to exclusivity, generally speaking, for sports rights and things like that. They wouldn't go after. Right. They wouldn't copy that strategy of spending vast amounts of money to have
that
exclusive sports content.
But the way that they're the other areas that they're doing, where they are actually spending on original content and all that sort of thing, it's not the big ticket competitive stuff.
Things, yeah.
It's like more niche areas that
exactly
they might be getting the same amount of content, but they're not spending anywhere near as much.
They're not having to go mental.
I think BT's other problem is that you talk about service providers trying to become aggregators of content and have an offering that's really rich and offers something to everybody basically. And BT has just based everything on sport. It seems to me, there's not a lot to BT.
It's gone for the sort of Sky model of 20 years ago,
and I think they're starting to feel the effects of that now. I mean, maybe this loss of customers, which I think is the first one in a few quarters, that they've actually. I think this third quarter 2016, they attracted about 60,000, between 50 and 60,000 TV customers. They lost 5,000 in the third quarter of 2017.
I think even the second quarter, if I remember correctly,
it was down a bit.
Well, not necessarily down a bit, but it was just such minor growth that it just wasn't even worth accounting
at least for. At the very best plateauing.
Yeah.
And you think like Premier League football. We've just had the sort of winter transfer window, and people are buying defenders no one's ever heard of for 75 million quid, and all that sort of stuff. They're just chucking money around everywhere. You do have to wonder what the value for money of being given that there isn't outright exclusivity anymore anyway, of being one of the rights holders of Premier League football when you're clearly having to pay that much if they've got so much money that they can chuck it around like we've just seen. I have to wonder if it's got to the point where it's just not value for money, not just for the fans, and people have been moaning about ticket prices and stuff for ages.
Yeah,
but it's not value for money for people who want to make money off the back of it as content.
Yeah,
well, I don't think it has been for years. I mean, the Premier League are just doing a fantastic job at getting more money. That's their job ultimately, isn't it?
Was it you who said that you had a feeling that at some point the money that attracts is going to start going down? There might be a dip because
I personally think that there's going to be so many different windows
to watch sport.
That the value is going to be the value for operators is just going to die.
But I also wonder if the appetite's there as well as much with younger generations. I mean, the kind of going to a football match on a Saturday afternoon and then watching it on TV in the evening.
Yeah,
it's quite an old-fashioned thing.
Yeah, and in Match of the Day, Match of the Day used to be a thing that all self-respecting blokes would watch. But maybe that's diminishing.
My son's into sport, but he doesn't consume it in that way. And you just kind of wonder when this generation gets older and starts buying things and signing up to services. They're probably not going to see the attractions.
Our kids' generation is completely non-linear, aren't they?
I mean that's what it is. It's nothing to do with live TV anymore. You look at the statistics that come out from who does it I can't remember. I think it's PwC who do or it might be Deloitte, one or the other, that do these sort of these are all the big trends in video. And do an annual report, and it just shows that all the younger demographics they don't give a crap about live TV.
Yeah,
they watch it whenever they want.
Actually, trying to think of my kids who are 13, 11. I'm trying to think of a time at all in recent memory where they've watched some linear TV.
Yeah.
Probably when we forced them to watch something like Bugsy Malone over Christmas and they hated it.
Yeah.
But
I'd say probably the last time I watched it. I don't watch any live TV or linear TV.
I don't watch much now myself.
You don't have a license?
I got a license, but I got Now TV, and I just watch box sets and I watch catch up and all that sort of thing.
So I wonder whether that's had an impact on sport. So I'm with you on the box set. If I watch TV with my wife, it'll be some kind of box set. as we're trying to find stuff that we both like. She doesn't want to watch sport. I don't want to watch some of the reality TV she likes or whatever. But we can agree on these great sort of HBO box sets or whatever. We're watching Black Mirror at the moment, which is just quality. And maybe even people who are football obsessives are finding themselves of an evening just as inclined to watch an episode of Black Mirror as they are Match of the Day. I don't know, I'm just guessing.
There's just so much. There's so much football at the moment. That's the only thing.
I think that you don't really need to watch Match of the Day live. You can go on BBC iPlayer.
That's true. Yeah.
Watch it whenever.
Yeah.
He's always breaking the window nowadays, isn't he?
Well, he's got a mic. Is this the first time you've had a mic here?
No, and I can go even further talking about replays. I myself like to watch goal replays on Instagram, bootleg ones.
Yeah. I watch a lot. I watch a lot of tries stuff
within
from
5
rugby.
minutes. Somebody will put it and it will be taken down, but you can see the goal.
I don't watch Instagram. Someone's got to give me Instagram lessons. I don't use it at all.
No.
Yeah.
I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
Is that Facebook owned?
Yeah, but it was. It was acquired.
Yeah.
And it's it's much more.
But it's not been sort of integrated with Facebook.
No,
has it? It's just its own
it's
thing.
quite
like
standalone. Yeah. Presumably sharing between them is easier, but
they started losing a generation, so they just bought the next one.
Right. Yeah.
That's their thing.
But that's running out as well.
Buy it or copy it.
Yeah.
We've totally shifted the conversation now.
Sorry.
We haven't. No, this is good. This is tangents. The only thing I'm keeping an eye on is the time. I think we should move on from that one. We've only got about half an hour left of Ian time. And what we're going to talk about? The big kit vendors.
Yeah.
So specifically Ericsson and Nokia. They both announced their numbers this week. I covered Ericsson, but Jamie covered Nokia. So when we get onto that, I'll sort of hand it over. Quick summary of Ericsson. Wasn't so great, was it?
No.
Their sales are down year on year.
Was it 5 consecutive quarters now of losses as well?
Yeah, and they're quite decent. Not just 1%. There's a decent amount of decline. And yes, it's more the decline rather than the sort of net profit or loss. It's people really need to see a shift in momentum from Ericsson. And we were saying this. We are about less than a month away from Mobile World Congress. This time last year, we were seeing Ekholm just come in.
Yeah,
we're like, right, we need to see some evidence of shift in momentum. That they got rid of Vestberg.
Yeah,
and a year later, there's not really any sign of it. Which I said at the end of my piece, Ekholm can't be very happy going into Mobile World Congress. He's going to have to stand up. And a year later go, just bear with us.
Well, they've really put the pressure on themselves this time because they have actually now said, haven't they, that a lot of the cost cutting that they've done, which is costly itself to do that, is now done.
Yeah.
There's no more need for impairment, write-downs or anything. There's a lot of that's behind them, and that this should now start to show up in the first half of 2018. So if they go and report results now in the next 6 months that are still pretty bleak, then I think maybe it's time that people start raising questions about Ekholm's.
Yeah, especially as he's also been purging the top table quite a lot. Yeah. I mean, they have this lovely little limbo that they put people into of advisor to the CEO. Yeah. Have you noticed?
Like, so that's Ewelson now, isn't it?
Yeah, right. So about March of last year, we had Jan Frickhammer and Magnus Manderson or something like that.
Yeah.
And
you become Ekholm's mate for a few months.
Yeah. So they got taken out of their sort of EVP job and just got made to his mate, which basically means a few months later you're out the door, son. Yeah. It's basically, it seems like sort of a sort of glamorized version of gardening leave. Yeah. And then what's his name? You just said his name.
Ewelson.
Yeah, Ewelson. So he's been around for ages.
He was CTO at one point and then head of digital services.
All sorts of stuff. And now digital services has been the division that's been sucking the most, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been.
And so they've just gone, I tell you what, mate, why don't you come and be my advisor? And he's like, oh, right. It's like that, is it? So let's see how that goes for him.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the other thing that I've been sort of keeping a close eye on is their attempt to sort out an area of diversification, the media.
Yes.
Sort of business unit, which basically consists of 2 sub-business units, which is a hardware-based one, like sort of broadcasting kit and broadcasting, that sort of thing, and then a more service one, which they rebranded back to what it was when they acquired Red Bee Media. And so basically, and they were looking to flog the lot.
Yeah.
But it looks like no one's been prepared to pay.
I don't know what the division is in revenues between those.
I listened to the little quarterly call. Yeah, it was about, I think they were talking in krona. I didn't catch the currency, but he said about 3 billion hardware, 2.5 billion services. So let's say 50-50 for the sake of argument. But the hardware bit accounts for a lot more of the losses. So it's a bigger liability.
Yeah.
Anyway, cut long story short, they are flogging 51% of their hardware bit to venture capital.
Yeah.
And they haven't managed to flog the Red Bee media at all.
They basically didn't get offers that they liked, so they've had to make.
So they're
deal
like,
with it.
yeah, obviously they're spinning it, going,
But I remember
fully behind
one
it.
analyst was sort of suggesting there was some backtracking on the strategy now because they started making all these noises about the media stuff's actually quite important to us.
Right.
Having sort of suggested last
making
year,
a virtue out of necessity.
It wasn't very important at all,
exactly.
and they just wanted to get back to what they did best, which was networks. Now they're saying, oh no, it is actually quite important, the media stuff, because they didn't sell it.
Well, there we are. I mean, as journalists, we are the recipients of a disproportionate amount of spin, and we do become a bit jaded and cynical. Certainly, people have commented to me how often we're going on about what a waste of time 5G is, and obviously a lot of other people would prefer us to sound more bullish. But in our defence audience, we do get a lot of this stuff coming in, so we're bound to be perhaps a little bit more jaded than average. That's the long and short of it. It just hasn't gone that well. We're still looking for the turnaround and all that sort of thing. Jamie, I'll for the sort of Nokia bit, I'll hand over to you. You can have a little talk about that, but I know from what we're talking about offline that you and Ian might have slightly different perspectives on their quarterly, so I'll hand over.
Well, no, I don't think we do have different perspectives.
Probably more interesting if you disagree.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for.
No, I mean, I know you'll go on and put a bit more detail in it, but I know you spotted that their mobile division is doing quite well.
It's reasonably. I mean, I think I'll let you talk first, and then I'll come in.
I mean, my whole view on it was, okay, it declined.
Yeah.
But it hit expectations, it hit analysts' expectations, and it's just navigating a tricky period at the moment, where operators aren't really spending big, and you're in between two spending cycles.
Yeah.
And Surrey's it's just a damage limitation at the moment. They can't make a shitload of money because there's not a lot of contracts out there to win.
Yeah.
So they're just gonna, they're not doing badly. I said my view on it is that at least they're not doing as badly as Ericsson, but who is doing as badly as Ericsson at the moment?
Yeah.
But they're just it's a bit of a drought out there, and he's negotiating it quite well. It's just not awful.
Enough.
I mean, I broadly agree. I think he's
note to self: don't try and set up intrigue before the conversation even starts.
He's done a pretty good job of managing. I think the other thing is it shows that because there are some bits that have grown within Nokia, and on the sort of IP. Internet protocol, some of the core network stuff, some of the applications and software stuff they've been doing. There's been a bit of takeover activity there, which might have had an effect on results, but they have been reporting some growth in those business lines and in the optical work they do as well. And it's sort of a vindication of that move to go and buy Alcatel-Lucent, which everyone was really sceptical about, that they'd never make it work, and it seems to have worked really, really well. They seem to have done a really good job of integrating it, and it's given them that that sort of end-to-end, I guess, portfolio that they didn't have before, which they said was going to be really important. As fixed and mobile become more sort of closely integrated themselves.
The one thing I did notice, and if you, I don't know whether you picked up on this, but so the fourth quarter was actually, when you look at how much their business is declining each month or each quarter, it was a lot better than the rest of the year. But if you look at profitability, that absolutely nosedived in the fourth quarter compared to the rest of the year. So my assumption is, they're selling more, but they're handing out a lot more discounts.
Yeah, and they've said there's going to be quite a lot of margin pressure this year as well, I think. That's the other thing, because as they start to spend money on 5G and as they do 5G trials in sort of readiness for 2019, 2020, they're saying there's going to be quite a lot of margin pressure. So the operating profits went down quite a lot, I think, at the networks business.
Yeah, it was down like 25%. Yeah.
But they are profitable, unlike Ericsson.
Yeah, they're still making money.
I mean, one thing my bugbear at the moment, and one thing that really kind of occurred to me this week, and maybe I should do a blog about it, is getting away from all these references to adjusted and one-offs.
Right.
And Nokia reports 2 sets of financials. It does them on a non-IFRS basis, and then it does them according to IFRS terms.
And all that stuff.
IFRS terms, they're still loss-making.
Yeah.
And these adjusted numbers that Ericsson
and
comes
Ericsson's
up with,
for currency.
Ericsson's forever. Well, if you look at our gross margins on an adjusted basis, we're actually moving in the right direction. But the trouble is that adjusted doesn't become a one-off. It's every quarter there's an adjustment.
I completely share your cynicism. When I was writing up Ericsson's, I put in brackets when adjusted for adjustments, because they're so nebulous.
And the operators do it a lot as well. I think this whole adjusted, reporting to different standards, it's all very...
Well, it's not like the equity analysts they're mainly, these figures are mainly for equity analysts rather than us.
Yeah.
It's not like they're not going to do that.
Exactly.
Dig below it and be fooled by this. We adjusted it because it was a bit rainy that month or something like that. Yeah, I know. I don't know why they bother, but there's all this sort of accounting dicking about. It seems to be completely endemic.
So Ericsson's thing is to take out restructuring charges a lot of the time when it shows margins. But the trouble is, every single quarter it restructures. Every quarter for the last several years, it's done some kind of restructuring. So
indeed,
it doesn't mean anything, does it? You're never going to get to a point where those
every
adjustments don't happen.
Every quarter has got adverse currency.
Yeah.
So by the sounds of it, the krona's been having a nightmare for about 10 years. Because every quarter it's got some.
Well, that was the thing about
currency
Nokia, I think. So they claimed that quite a lot of the businesses actually reported revenue growth in constant currency terms.
Right.
But when you kind of converted it to back to, what is it, they report in euros?
They report in euros.
But when you report,
no, they don't actually. No,
they report in euros.
It's dollars, isn't it?
No, Nokia reports in euros.
Yeah, Nokia euros
but they put all the declines down to this sort of reported, and on constant currency terms we were actually growing, but like you say, it's another way of kind of.
And they were and this happens when companies, back to my sort of previous rant about us being the recipients of lots of spin, one thing that does happen, I sometimes get a company sort of moaning that I've gone too far the other way. They've tried to spin it one way and I've just taken the piss. And I'm just like, well, maybe if you didn't sort of try and deceive me, I wouldn't feel antagonised and feel inclined to go in the other direction. So it's a double-edged game. In our industry, they count on a certain proportion of hacks just kind of copying and pasting what they say and taking it at face value, and that's fine. There's a role for that, but telecoms and light reading, we both sort of take a pride in trying to get under the skin, and call bullshit when we see it. So and the more they seem to be bullshitting us, the more we're going to look for it. So be careful there. Okay, all right, that's that. How are we doing for time? We might as well move on to the tech giants, because there are a lot of them, and they did a lot of announcing. So basically, pretty much all the big sort of US players announced this week, and they're all making tons of money. I mean, I think we're in a point in the global cycle where things are quite good. I think equity markets are pretty buoyant, so things on the whole are ticking along quite nicely. But I'll start off with the one I just wrote up today, which is Apple. And Apple is just an obscene money-making machine. They brought in about $88 billion of revenue, of which 20 odd billion was profit. So they just got another 20 bill and went, we'll put it over there with the 180 bill that we've already got there, just on the top of it. And we'll worry about.
They're like these diamond companies that sort of swindle people into thinking you have to give diamonds to
when you get
engaged. And now it's Apple's the kind of modern day equivalent. You have to own an iPhone, otherwise you.
I know
people
go
out and spend money on this.
Well, that's an interesting one. When I was writing it up, I was chatting to some of my mates on IM, most of whom have iPhones, and just I didn't have an agenda, because what was quite clear, to finish off, what actually happened. What's quite clear is that this quarter of reporting is the first quarter when the iPhone X, or the iPhone 10 as they want us to call it, hence I call it X for the aforementioned contrariness.
They're going to call the 11 X1. Like
do you know we're going to get all Roman numeral about it, or Y?
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, and they obviously sold quite a lot of them. Their total volume of iPhone shipments was down 1% year on year, but the overall smartphone industry was down about 8 or 9% year on year. So it still outperformed the industry, and this is with a really pricey phone that costs north of $1,000.
Yeah.
and most people were going like, "There's no way, £1,000. They're just taking a piss now. I'll spend £800 or something on a phone, but £1,000, you're having a laugh." But yes, they seem to have gone off and bought it. And so the interesting thing is their shipments were down 1% year on year, but their revenue just from iPhones was up 13%.
Yeah, because of the cost of those devices.
So I was writing up a quote from my old company, Strategy Analytics, where they said that their average selling price is now about $800 for a phone. The average selling price of an Android is about $200.
Yeah,
it's just ridiculous. So,
but I'm still astonished in a way because I remember upgrading. I'm ashamed to say I have an iPhone.
That's
just
quite
moaned
right.
about Apple a lot.
But
I went to do an upgrade recently from a 6, and I got offered the option of having an X.
Yeah,
but it would mean paying. I mean, normally you upgrade your phone and you just go on a tariff that's maybe a little bit more expensive.
Subsidised, but
they wanted quite a lot on the tariff, but they also wanted £400 as an upfront payment. And I thought, well, if there are other people,
and the tariff would have been like 50-60 quid a month as well.
And this is what I can't fathom is people who are prepared to spend as an upfront fee that amount of money to get hold
where are they
of
finding it all of a sudden? Thieving, no doubt.
And I hate all this, like you said, the iPhone X. I mean, Steve Jobs would be turning in his grave, surely, whose big message and mantra was all about simplicity and not having all these silly little labels that Nokia and all these companies used to have when they made phones. You just have a device called the iPhone. I mean, like you say, where's it going to go next? What does the X become? The Y, or do they start tagging numbers on after that?
Possibly, although I think Steve Jobs would be quite
he'd always be quite happy with the financial
in his grave when he looked at the numbers. He'd be like,
but I kind of feel that they've gone away from some of the things he believed.
Could well be. Well, so the tricky bit there, and the smartphone industry's been like this since I left it 3.5 years ago. Is that we've got this peak form factor, this black rectangle. We haven't really been able to do anything with that for at least 5 years.
Yeah.
And so all you can do is you can incrementally improve the spec, obviously better camera, better processor, better screen. But then all you can try and do is inject some other technologies. I think one of the big ones with the X was this face recognition sort of stuff.
There's not much that it does have, and that's the post-Jobs failure to me. Really, is to come up with anything.
Yeah, it is post-Jobs failure. But
compelling.
I suspect here we are using his name in vain. But I suspect he would have struggled.
Oh, I'm not using his name in vain. I think he.
No, they did putting words into his.
They did wonderful things in terms of the devices they were coming out with when he was there. Starting off with the iPod, and since he's gone, there's been a lack of innovation.
Definitely. But I think that's also go on.
They actually never come up with something new. They wait for somebody to come up with it and then
do it better.
Yeah, well, they haven't even done a good job of that though, of sort of following and doing it better.
But no one.
What have they done in the last?
But do it better as the iOS. The real breakthrough with the iPhone wasn't anything to do with the hardware. It was the touchscreen interface, and we'd had a touchscreen interface. I remember I used to review like Symbian phones and even Windows Mobile, where you had to use a little stylus to get these Windows drop-down menus on your phone. It was
Palm
a nightmare.
Pilot,
all that sort of stuff. So that's what they did really well there. But there's no sign of them doing anything better. Like they've recently launched their smart speaker, and it's about 3 times the price of anything else. But it's not obvious to me how it's some paradigm shift, how they've
It's getting amazing sound reviews, apparently.
Sound reviews, but it wants to if it costs 3 times as much.
I wonder if Apple, we're talking about the other tech giants a bit now, and the big ones being sort of Google, Microsoft, Facebook, these companies that are now the most valuable companies in the world. Apple's very, very Amazon. Apple's very, very different, isn't it? We look at those companies being very much software companies and making investments in artificial intelligence, trying to position themselves in a way where they sort of infiltrate all aspects of your life and they can make money from various. Whereas Apple's still very much a devices company, still cranking out these luxury trinkets, basically.
But it makes much more money than any of them. So I wrote this in my summary today: 20 billion profit, which was about 2 billion up on the same period last year. Amazon, which is on an absolute roll.
Yeah, well, they don't make much at all, do they?
Well, so they made a profit, and this is allowing for about $750 million of tax benevolence that's come from somewhere. They still made a total profit of under 2 billion. So Apple's increase in profit was greater than Amazon's total profit.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, as you rightly say. So Apple's hardware, Google and Facebook are media.
Yeah.
Microsoft software and services, Amazon's retail.
Yeah.
They're all in quite different areas, but hardware is still the one that's absolutely coining it because of the margins that they make on these things, whereas other Android smartphone vendors aren't making any profit at all.
But the other thing is all the others I see doing, and this is something Jamie writes about a lot. They're all doing quite interesting things in the sort of AI area, it seems, or trying to get into that side a lot more. I don't really see much evidence of that with Apple.
No, well, let's hand it over.
Siri
we haven't given Jamie a word in edgeways for a bit. Let's hand it over. You wrote about sort of Google and Amazon today, and you wrote about some other quarterlies earlier on in the week. And we were chatting offline about, is Apple going to end up, even though it's absolutely caning it still now, is it going to start sort of falling behind to people like Google and Amazon because of things like AI? Why don't you sort of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is something there was a couple of weeks ago that I can't remember who I was talking to about it, but we're this long-term speculation that the smartphone might disappear in the future because everything will be connected. So because it can recognise your voice, everything can become your personal device.
Right. It'd be like an episode of Black Mirror.
Yeah. It could be the speaker in your living room, or it could be like Minority Reports, where all of a sudden all the advertising boards recognise you. You could access your life through anything like that. So I mean, I see in the real value in the long run. I'm not saying that Apple's going to disappear, but where people are going to start spending more money and giving more attention is these services areas, and this is where Apple just isn't very good. When you look at the virtual assistants, Siri is just not as good as Alexa or
terrible.
Google. Yeah,
it basically Googles what you just said.
Yeah,
honestly.
Yeah, I mean,
really?
Google is absolutely.
And they were first as well, so if really fallen. Siri came out before all this other stuff.
But they never really bought. Well, it came out before, but Google bought DeepMind ages ago, didn't they? I can't remember when it was.
3 years ago, 4 years ago.
No, it was. It might. So Siri would have come out first. Yeah. But at the same time, like that is looking like the biggest bargain you ever come across in your life. Like 500 million they spent on DeepMind, and that's defining every single product area that they're in now. Which is where, and I think,
does it actually have? Because whenever you think of DeepMind, you just think of like playing, AlphaGo, and
no, but apparently, even
but it does actually have a big impact on all their product lines.
AI's business, that is
which
the
is from
foundation.
DeepMind.
DeepMind is like the foundation of their AI.
DeepMind is more
R&D.
than just a game playing.
Well, that's just an exercise to show
a lot of money in
how we can do it.
They run it to help every single product, basically.
Yeah.
Like the camera somehow.
Yeah.
It's better because of DeepMind.
I mean, AlphaGo is just literally okay, look what we can do. It's a PR stunt. It's nothing more than that. But DeepMind, the algorithms that they write and the ability and the AI ability that they can entwine in every part of the business, whether it's their advertising solutions or improving their rankings on their the search engine, or optimizing your routes home, because I get it every day. It pops up when I leave the office or I'm about to leave the flat. It says today it's going to be 41 minutes when you get to work, or something like that.
To do that.
And that's no prompt or anything like that.
DeepMind is increasing the kind of brain within Google.
Yeah, I think so. I think
it's suitably sinister sounding as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Didn't they
Sounds too much like Deep Throat
spend less money on energy on the server, like farms?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
To optimize the power consumption or something?
I mean, what they're doing with DeepMind, like IBM is doing with Watson, and like Watson is great. And this is one of the things that we were talking about earlier. What is Apple going to do with all this cash? And one of the things they could do is like Siri's crap. It's not very good. So they're trying to they've got their virtual assistants. They're into the smart speaker market. But to really play in this world, they need a really good virtual assistant which can actually help you. So might they go out and acquire someone to actually build their AI capabilities in house? That's an area. They've got 180 billion, 200 billion that they need to do something with.
Yeah,
it will make the guys at Siri look really bad.
Yeah,
maybe they need to buy a DeepMind-like company.
Yeah,
maybe,
but go out and find the next university spin-off that's doing incredible things, or they could go.
They could buy a few things, couldn't they?
No, they could
buy Netflix and still have a bit of money left over.
That's it. That's what I was chatting about. So we'll finish off on that because we only got a couple more minutes. But their CFO actually come out and told the FT that they've got about 160 bill kicking about after they've paid Donald Trump a bunch of money to repatriate their cash. And by the way, fair play to Trump. He's getting money off Google and Apple and all these people repatriating cash. Now I'm going to have loads of people calling me a fascist for saying fair play to Trump, but there you go. So they got 160 bill, let's say, for sake of argument, and they got to spend it. They'll give some of it in dividends, some of it share buyback, some of it other little bits and bobs. But they've still got, let's say they've still got 100 bill just to blow on something. They could buy almost anything with that. And so Netflix is one distinct one. But so my point is, Jamie, I completely agree. They're behind the times on AI, so buy your way up to a bit more competence there. Yeah. But they are still, as we were just saying, they're a product company. They're not a media company. They're not a software and services company. They're not a retailer. They're a product company. So I'm just trying to think what product segments they could buy themselves into for that to suddenly be a massive growth area.
In terms of longevity of the success of a business, you've got to get out of just being a product company. I say that Apple has sort of like defied trends, and is still at the top of the table. But every other product company, like Samsung,
partly because Apple's so bloody good at it.
But but not even just devices.
You need to sell services these days.
I agree with you both.
TVs, LG makes bugger all money nowadays. Compared to what it was years ago. Toshiba, the JVC, these big product companies,
the big Japanese and South Korean ones. But I don't disagree with you, but I do think you've got to bear in mind that Apple is completely exceptional in that respect. It's completely unlike any other product company. It persuades people to pay a kind of margin they wouldn't dream of paying any other company. And I don't think, also in my experience of writing about companies, they don't tend to diversify massively away from their core competence. I mean, it can happen, like IBM got away from mainframes and PCs and software and services, but it takes decades to do. I still think it's more likely that Apple's going to want to think, what is our next big actual product area? So that's where they might buy something. Pierre just said Tesla,
but there's
a possibility.
They are breaking the rule at the moment, but if you look back on every trend over the last 100 years, the people that are breaking the rule and defying the rule eventually stop doing that. The exception to the rule remains the exception for X amount of time, and Apple might continue to do it for another 30-40 years, but eventually trends, stereotypes win over. Stereotypes are there for a reason, and exceptions are exceptions for a reason.
I agree,
because they eventually end.
I agree with you over the longer term, but it's got this money now and it's looking to spend it now. And I think it will probably point it in a product direction. But just before we sign off, Jamie, apart from all the AI and perhaps buying half of IBM or whatever, can you think of any other thing that if you were Tim Cook you'd drop 100 bill on?
I don't know. I mean, content, they've been rubbish on that. So maybe Netflix. A big content house. Well, not necessarily not necessarily a platform. Because with they do need a platform. Because if they're going to try and get into the content game, they've got to get it out there somewhere, so they need a platform. But then they've been rubbish at actually creating content, so why not actually a studio or something like big studio?
They bought a whole bunch of scripts, like Damien Chazelle, the La La Land guy, they bought a whole series from him. Steven Spielberg as well, they bought a movie from him.
They bought
J.J. Abrams.
So that's them trying to build it from the ground up, and what we're saying is maybe also just buy some ready-made stuff. What about you, Ian? What would they buy? What would you drop 100 bill on if you were Tim Cook?
It's got to be something that gets them more into the services side of things, I suppose, because it's like you say, it's getting those recurring revenues from somewhere. They're doing very well out of selling phones at the moment, but is that going to last? It's very possible, that smartphones aren't around in 10, 15, 20 years. The way things are going, with connected devices. So I think they need to.
No specific companies spring to mind that would sort of help it in that direction. You don't have to. Just wondering.
I think we've talked about it, but it needs to be something on the AI side. I think I agree. They need to do some kind of deep mind takeover, but they're not going to spend 100 billion on that. I'm guessing they're going to buy some small startups.
They could quite feasibly buy 10 or 20 things.
They could buy a lot of AI companies
for 200 million each, and then just figure out which one's the best one. They've got enough cash to do it.
Well, I'm going to go to sign off. I'm going to go Tesla and the Apple car.
Elon Musk will never sell to that.
No, this is just what the hell. They buy Tesla, make an Apple car, and everything in it is Apple, and then you go home and everything's Apple. That's what they want.
I think it's going to be some sort of platform.
Cool.
What, like Netflix?
Some content platform.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
People should vote.
People should vote. Yeah, I didn't ask you, Pierre. What would you buy if you were Tim Cook?
Vote, like, comment. See what they think.
Who's right out of me and Ian and Jamie? You vote.
Probably Jamie.
Okay. Yeah, always is.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thanks a lot for listening. Make sure you join us for the next one.